I'm Samuel Honnold, and this is what's not in the news. I'd like to talk a little today about the Antifa movement, antifascista, or anti-fascist action, where it comes from, what the history is of it, where the words were defined and how they've been redefined, and where it's going today. First, let's talk about a fascist. From J. Edgar Hoover's book, Masters of Deceit, 1958. By the way, if this book is too thick for you and you want to understand what is really going on behind the scenes and how these kind of movements worm their way in, use doublespeak, feints, and strategic retreats, that also is a communist term. It's in this book, the strategic retreat. The one who fights and runs away to fight another day. Here is a great book by George Orwell. I bought this for 10 cents at a garage sale. If you don't have a copy, you should get one. And it's told in story form, so it's not going to be full of the mind-boggling dates and the Russian names that are very difficult to get your head around. It's just a straightforward story of the games that people play to bring in a totalitarian regime. Here's another really good one, Tortured for Christ by Pastor Richard Wurmbrand. Cozies up to the Catholic Church a little bit too much, I think, because he was in jail with some Catholic priests in Romania. There was still war at that time against the Catholic Church. It is a good question how Soviet Russia ever became Soviet, because Lenin had his revolutionaries, he and Trotsky and Stalin, and they were prepared to go in and to cause chaos and attempt to take over in the aftermath of World War I. But there's a question of who paid for it, and when Lenin went to Moscow on the train, it was full of gold. Somebody paid for it. So it's worth thinking about that this was never a popular movement. Even the first state of communism was not a popular movement. Now, we're talking about communism in this book, the story of communism in America and how to fight it. That's also a word that's changed meaning, and the cult of takeover and tyranny has really tried to shed that image and to redefine itself. But here's what Hoover says. Join the Communist Party and see progress. That's in quotes, meaning that it's a term that they have defined, or that an American word, an English word that this movement has redefined. Join the Communist Party and see progress. Those who do not join are reactionaries, fascists, and warmongers. So, what he is saying is that fascist, even though historically it was a political movement, a religious movement, what he's saying is that this is a name that is called to someone who is not going along with the tyrannical takeover and destruction of the United States. It's just a dirty name. It's just a dirty name that people are called. Now, we know that this was a real political movement and that they were very pronounced in the Second World War. A lot of people fought and died to uproot fascism. But let's talk about what fascism is. The fascist party, the Nazi party in Germany, was originally the NSDAP. Now, this is an acronym. 3 of these are cognates in English, but 2 of them are different. So, N is national, S is socialist, D is Deutsch, that is German, P is Party, and A is Arbeiters, that is workers. So National, Socialist, German, Workers, Party. Socialist. Socialist. Now, even those who think that communism is over here and fascism is way over here, they know that socialism is a kissing cousin to communism. The fact is that fascism is a socialist totalitarian movement. They're very, 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 very similar. Now, one of the things that Hoover goes into great detail about is the bitter infighting anytime there's a communist takeover anywhere in the world. There's factionalism. Because they appeal to this group and that group, they'll appeal to a minority group and say, you need greater inclusion. They'll appeal to a workers group and say, we need to fight for better rights. They'll appeal to a women's group and say, well, women are really oppressed here, and we're going to help you to fight for that. So they bring them all into this central control mechanism, and then some of them fight with one another. Aside from that, it's totally godless and devoid of Christian love. So, where does that leave us? Last time I got into my lesson and I ran out of time before we got into communist discipline and life in the party. One of the things that Hoover says is, the average member does not consider that when he strengthens the party, he is giving them the strength to discipline him in the future. And in the use of euphemism, he tells about some of the discipline. I'm just going to read a paragraph here. One day in January 1950, a member was told to proceed to Cleveland, Ohio to help in perfecting plans for the communist underground in Ohio. Upon arrival, he was taken ostensibly to a party meeting in the basement of a residence. There he was ordered to remove his clothes and for a period of several hours was subjected to the basest of indignities. He was then told that he would not leave alive, as 6 other communists, who Lautner said had butcher knives, revolvers, rubber hoses, and a recording machine, started questioning him about his knowledge of the underground, his army record, his relationship with Hungarian defectees, and his reports to federal agencies. He was accused of being an enemy agent, a spy. It is extremely important to understand that the type of inhuman abuse that is now being discovered in dungeon after dungeon within the United States and around the world is a pillar of the Communist Party. Remember that this is 1950s guarded language. When this says that he was stripped naked and subjected to the basest of indignities, we can only imagine the horrific sexual torture and sexual abuse that this man suffered. When we build this party, we're asking for that to happen in America. Secret courts, secret executions, enforced compliance by trauma and trauma-based programming, which, although that's in the public mind now, Hoover called that thought control and discusses it in this book. He talks about the thought control that goes on in the party. We have time just for one more thing. So I'd like to tell you where communism began, if I can find my note. It began in Chicago, Illinois in 1919. In the beginning it seemed little more than a freak. Yet in the intervening years that freak has grown into a powerful monster, endangering us all. The communists of 1919 were a motley lot. Those who would even throw a bomb or lead a riot, to comical show-offs attracted by violent language and subversive possibilities. Many believe revolution in the United States was imminent. Friends, that's what we have now, and the Antifa movement really should be Antifa shite, because it's a bunch of bull hockey. It's not what it claims to be. Get out of it. Become a real American.